Well, folks, this is take 2 because I just got all the way through this video and realized that it wasn't recording. So, okay, so this is my spiritual journey video, and it's my experience with spirits. So if you don't believe in spirits, or you think it's complete hogwash, this is probably not the blog post and video for you. I am what you would call a critically thinking believer. I don't know with 100% certainty what happens when we die, and I'm not quite sure we're supposed to know. I'm just going to take a drink because I literally just talked for 20 minutes and didn't record a thing, so I'm trying not to be annoyed. So when it comes to things like ghosts, spirits, hauntings, I have a few ideas, but I'm not sure if I believe in anything, because as Rufus from Dogma let us know, I think it's better to have ideas. You can change an idea. Changing a belief is trickier, and I freaking love that movie. So I think that energy can stick around when something happens, like an energetic fingerprint, and then that energy can attract more of the same kind of energy. It can kind of build up and compile. I don't know if that then can attract low-level spirits or intelligence, or it turns into intelligence, or a consciousness connects to it. I don't know. I don't know if it's just that we can't see that plane of existence or that energy. Like, we can't see a lot of colors, so maybe, you know, it's all around us all the time. Can the people who we loved who have crossed over come back? Is there such a thing as unfinished business? Do we call upon a memory simply, or a DNA memory from the DNA and the genetics that are passed through to us? I'm not 100% sure. I'd love to hear what you think on this and add your thoughts to it. I know that science is constantly discovering new things, and quantum physics and things like that have really shifted the way in which we view reality. So maybe we'll know, a little bit more about this in the future. So here are some of the experiences that have happened to me that other people have also witnessed. There are more where this came from, but I don't want to talk about it all day because we could be here forever. And this is some of the reasons why I cannot and do not watch a lot of horror and TV shows. My reality can be interesting enough. I have a very active imagination. I do not need any help. This does not happen every day to me. I'm not a medium. I have some mediumship experience, and I've had readings where people have come, and I was going to do some training in this, but I decided it was not my path, and I stopped. And I have been getting a pressure headache, I shit you not, ever since starting to talk about this. So I don't know, what do you think that is about? Woo-wee. All right, so the first experience I'm going to call, it's called Bull Creek, which is a suburb in Western Australia. So we lived in this house as a family after my family lived in this house after they sold our childhood house in Australia. And there was a back room at the end of a very long hallway, and my mum's cat, who she only really likes my mother, she hates everybody else, would not go into that room. She would sit at the doorway, she'd meow at the doorway, but she would never actually step over the threshold. And the room had 3 sections to it. It was a big rectangular room, and it had 2 dividers in it, which was partial dividers, which was kind of random. So it was my mum's sewing room, but I broke up with my boyfriend and moved back home, and I got 2 sections of that back room, and she used the third one as her sewing nook. And I quickly began to know why the cat wouldn't go in there. My mum cleaned the room out for me physically, and I cleansed the room in the way that I normally do, with my sage and my sprays, my bells, my sigils and drums. And as I was finishing with the protective sigils, I heard a yelling in my right ear. And I figured that something had shifted in that room, because wouldn't you know it, the cat then, for the first time ever since they moved into that house, came into the room. And my mum could not believe it. Also in that house, a few nights later, I was in bed. And usually I'm up during the night. I don't sleep very well. I suffer from insomnia. I have a whole bunch of sleep issues. And I opened my eyes and there was a woman standing in the doorway. And she was dressed in like Mary Poppins kind of era clothing, but she did not look like Mary Poppins. And I could see every detail. I could see how her hair was pinned up. I could see the layers of clothing she was wearing. And as I'm talking about it, I can see what she looked like still in my mind. She had a brooch on her, you know, one of those cabochon brooches. It was like looking at someone, like looking at you. She looked at me for a moment and then turned and walked down the hallway. So it was like she was transposed over the normal reality that we can see, like a extra layer of film. And it was very interesting. She wasn't menacing or anything, but she was just one of the clearest spirits I've ever seen. I didn't find out anything about her. It was just, I didn't want to be frank. It was just the first time I really saw spirit in human form, to the point where it was like, it had detail, right? So I felt a lot of things, but it's not like I see them like I would see someone sitting next to me. So that was a very interesting experience. The second one I want to talk about is Fremantle. So my home turf, I would consider my home turf, Freo, has an old prison where they used to hang people, and it was functioning for a long time. It was only shut down in 1991, and the last death sentence was carried out in October 1964. So if anywhere was going to be haunted in WA, this would be it. Although there's a lot of places. We've had shipwrecks, there's been attempted genocide, like anywhere there's a lot of history, but this place, because it's a structure, kind of holds a lot of that in. So there have been so many reports, like you Google the reports on this about hauntings, that it is hard to keep up with it. And there are like fully grown men who you wouldn't want to deal with if you wouldn't start anything with them, that would flatly refuse to work there. So it's a very interesting place. I've been on the night tour twice, and I've been there during the day. So the night tour is more of like a haunted ghost story tour anyway. So they sort of set the scene for that kind of stuff. But the first time I went, I was quite young. I was in the Girl Guides. I went with the guides, and my dad was there, and it was a massive group, and I didn't really experience anything, in the spirit realm. But the second time, I really should have known better. I was 22, so very active already on my pagan path, and a working witch at the time. From many years before. So my boyfriend at the time came with me, but I also was a little bit more prepared. So I took protective crystals. I had them in my bra, my pockets, and I was wearing my pentacle. My boyfriend at the time was awesome. He was also a spiritual guy, and he didn't give me any kind of shit for doing anything that, for anything that I was saying or experiencing that night. And he also helped by walking behind me and supporting me energetically the whole time, even though he didn't really realize it, which was very, very cool. The place was pretty creepy, but there were two very full-on experiences. So the first one was in a cell block that they bought the death-sentenced prisoners for the last 24 hours of their life. It's not a charming place. Just outside of this cell block, there's a whipping frame, so that was energetically nasty enough. It's like, but the holding block only had 8 cells from memory, and the second I walked in there, I wanted to pass out. It was awful. I heard screaming in my head from multiple voices, all yelling in like pain and frustration and insanity and fear and hate. And it was so overwhelming, both energetically, like the pushing and the voices, that I had to go outside. I don't even remember what was talked about in that space. I was just like, I could not be in there. Of course, a space like that is going to be holding that kind of energy. But the other thing about that block is that it's so isolated. It's just this standalone block with these tiny rooms that there's no natural flow of air. So it's dank, and it's all held on to this ick. So that was the first one. And then we moved on to the hanging room, and the group gets separated. So one goes up one platform and one goes up the other platform. So one side is a viewing platform where the family, I guess, or the victim's family or whoever wants to come and see a good old hanging. And the other side is for officials, the hangmen, guards, and the doctors and things like that. So we were on the viewing side, and I mean, there are like bloodstains on the floor, and it's just not a very nice space. And this young guy in his late teens, who was so not interested in being there, went and sat on a chair in the corner of the room and started playing on his phone. And as the guide was talking about it, he was on the other side with the other part of the group. We were at the railing, and I felt this cold chill go right up my back, and the door wasn't open, there was no air coming in. And the second that I felt that, the teenage guy who was sitting in the chair behind us, jumped up and yelled, "What the hell was that?" My boyfriend took a photo of where he was sitting, and there were orbs in it. I mean, again, I'm pretty skeptical about that kind of stuff because it could just be dust being kicked up. But what was interesting is that everyone on our side felt the air temperature drop, everybody. So maybe it was an elaborate prank by the prison, maybe not, who knows. So the kitchens felt horrible too. It was just not, and the laundry, bleh. It was not a nice place. I felt like I was stuck in a Silent Hill video game. It's a huge tourist attraction in Fremantle, and you can go during the day. You can go on a boat tour. There's tunnels under it. So if you're ever looking at going ghost hunting, visit the Fremantle prison, and it's a very cool place. Historically, some of the cells have got some incredible art that people have done in there. It's held some very notorious people in our history. It was just also very spooky. And so the last one is when I used to live in a house on Disney Street. And yes, I did. I lived in Disney Street. This is a good one to leave with because it's a little lighter. So I was living there with a very good friend of mine from high school. We're still friends this day. It was a really nice house. It was an older house, but I guess like by European standards, it was new. I used the back room for readings in my library. I never spent too much time in there, and all the cleansing in the world didn't help shift that energy. So here are a few things that happened in that house. And we were nearly there for 2 years. We were there for a very, very long time. So we had a spirit that would walk. We had wooden floorboards. Did I mention that? I don't know if I did, but we had wooden floorboards, and we had a spirit who would walk from the back door. This is a house that hadn't been renovated or anything like that. We'll walk through the back door, through the kitchen, through the living space, and down the hallway at least once a night. And there was only 2 of us living in the house, and so you would know if our rooms were very close together. So if my roommate was going to go out of her room, I would hear her get up, open the door, and walk around, and it was certainly not her. And my boyfriend at the time didn't believe me until he heard it himself at 3 o'clock in the morning, one morning. And I just said, yeah, that's our ghost Sparrow. Just like all nonchalantly. We had a mouse called Jack too, so we had Jack Sparrow. And that was kind of our way of making a bit of a joke around it. I never felt anything really menacing about that. I just sort of let it be. Maybe it was a memory, just like a routine memory kind of shifting through there. I don't know. But that was definitely something that we all at more than one point heard. And one night I was out with said boyfriend, and my housemate called me. As soon as I answered the phone, she started to freak right out. She was standing on the couch with a candle holder as a weapon because she heard the spirit. And I started to laugh. I mean, what a horrible person I am. But I started to laugh because really, what is a candle holder going to do? Like, nothing. So we came home soon after that, and I talked to her for a bit on the phone just to kind of help calm her down a little bit. But I remember that, just the visual of her standing on the couch with a candle holder. Classic. So another experience was my sister ended up moving in with us for a while, and she had a very angry male spirit at the foot of her bed on more than one occasion, yelling at her all sorts of horrible things. That was a spirit I never had any interaction with, but my younger sister is probably even more empathic and intuitive than I am. She's just never developed it. So, and of course I'm going to take that seriously, if she's experiencing this and this is happening. So I called a friend in with a lot more experience with this than me, to get a game plan for dealing with it. So we put a lot of crystal grids in the house and cleansing, and yeah, it was just more that she didn't want that in her life, and I didn't want that in her life. And as the person who's like the witch in the house, the resident witch, you know, people come to me with this sort of stuff, and she was living in the house, and that was the back room that I used to have everything in. So what we determined that was there was actually energy, because the block got subdivided, as happens when lots of people move into a city. So we were in the original, and there was a house that was built at the back, and something happened in the back there, but was still attached to the house. So that was why that was happening right at the back there. So that was not very nice. So those were, you know, a few things that have happened to me over the years. I guess I wanted to share with you is, much of the time when I tell people that I'm a witch and that I read tarot, they assume that I'm a medium. And without a doubt, when I go somewhere and I tell people what I do, it always comes up, and we always eventually start talking about things, spooky things that have happened to people, because most people have a story. It's so common that people have stories of things that they can't explain, and people don't always talk about it because of fear of judgment, of being silly. So I hope to at least open the floor to discussion, with thought and respect for people's beliefs and backgrounds. So if you leave a comment, be nice about it. Who's to say what's real and what's not? Certainly not me. Science may explain a lot of this later on, but I'd love to hear some of your stories about your experiences with spirit, and what your theories are on it. And thank you so much for watching.